Great. That was such fun. Yeah, that was really great. So it's beautiful to be with you today. And, we've kind of been looking at spiritual gifts and looking at the fact that in unity, our spiritual gifts are tagged into those 12 powers, that those are kind of basic underlying energy qualities of being that we all have. But we're going to look today a little bit differently, and you'll hopefully begin to connect some of the 12 powers to some of the gifts that may unfold for you. And in a little bit, I'm going to ask Meg and Kate to pass out some paper, and if you don't have a pen, we've got some pens, because I want to actually let you explore this for yourself a bit. Yesterday, I've been working on this talk, and actually this spiritual gifts is a program and a class that I've taught in Unity before. And, it can be taught over 6 weeks, or it can be a retreat where people gather and do it. But I've been thinking about it for a while, and I thought it was timely that we would begin to focus a little bit more individually on what our spiritual gifts are. And so yesterday, how the divine is so great for us. Yesterday, I opened my daily word as I was working on my talk, and books and things are out. And the daily word yesterday was, I say yes to life. And if we remember the 12 powers, life is one of the 12 powers. There's life and there's renunciation. And life is about saying yes, and renunciation is about letting go or saying no to the things that no longer serve us. So part of this daily word was really perfect for what we're going to be looking at today. My passions and gifts are how I shine the light of God into the world. My passions and gifts are how I shine the light of God into the world. I do not shrink from opportunities to share myself, to serve, to make my mark upon the world. If before I might have said no because I thought I wasn't good enough or didn't have what it would take to get something done, I dare to make a new choice. I say yes. I say yes as I recognize the power of God within me and rise to any challenge or opportunity I may be called to face. I say yes to rise to the power of God within me. It's a very different way for us to understand how we show up in the world, rather than thinking about, I say yes through personality or through ego or because somebody told me I should do this certain thing, but rather to be aware that when we're saying yes to the divine energy of God that is flowing through us. And I think, I don't know if you're like me, there was a time in my life where I was searching for my purpose. Did anybody do that? I mean, I think it's kind of an ongoing thing in life. We get to a place where we think we found our purpose and we can anchor it to our job, like some sort of thing that we do in the world. But then sometimes there comes a moment when there's a disconnection there. Maybe the things that we love to do at a certain age in our life anchored us in to be in a particular role in the world. But then we evolve spiritually. Literally, it's that spiritual evolution that calls us to have, for me, it was kind of like a divine discontent. There was like something inside me that was like, I'm good at what I'm doing, it's okay, but there's something more for me. There's something more for me in the world. And that, I think, happens to us over our lifetime. It's part of the evolution of the soul. And, people can talk about a midlife crisis and maybe it happens for us when we're in that stage in our 40s. But I think it happens again at a retirement, when we have retirement, or it happens for us if our kids we become empty nesters, or we have a transition in the family, we lose a loved one, or there's a divorce. All of these kind of big upheavals and changes can be signals for us that there's something else that's moving and growing inside of us. Does that resonate with some of you? Yeah. I found an interesting quote from Richard Rohr, and I think some of you may have read his work. He has a new book out, which I'm looking forward to reading. But in this particular book, it's called Things Hidden, Scripture as Spirituality. And this is what he says. He says, yes, we do have roles and tasks in this world, but finally they are all the same: to uniquely be divine love in a way that no one else can or will. To uniquely be divine love in a way that no one else can or will. And I can see that and kind of feel that as talking about the potential, the divine potential that's in each one of us. We talk about God as love, that we are this nature of love. We are the essence of love, expressing, we hope. We hope that's what we're expressing. You know, there's so many different ways to kind of look at this idea of our spiritual gifts. And people have said that we don't actually choose our gifts. We don't go out and say, oh, I'm this. We discover them, we uncover them. And part of it is uncovered during the journey of our life, when all of a sudden something comes through us that we really were not expecting. Or maybe there's a challenge in life, and the things that we need to meet that challenge are not things that we knew we had before, but for whatever reason, these new qualities of being are called forth in us. Has anyone had that experience? I know I certainly have had it. And sometimes it's a very challenging, painful experience that we're called to deal with. And other times it's just part of our daily life, and we're called up higher in consciousness, called, to kind of pull ourselves out of whatever lower level of consciousness or sense that we can't do, won't do, not equipped, and really do what needs to be done in the moment. Be who needs to be present to the moment. Because when we're talking about spiritual gifts, we're not talking about the doing. We're talking about the being, the quality of being that is the divine quality that each one of us are uniquely carrying in the world. When it happens in interesting times, as I was driving up here this morning, I have a good 45 minutes to an hour to just be present with what's percolating, for me right now to percolate before it's going to come out of the mouth that is my mouth. But, what I was remembering was a time when I was studying to be a licensed Unity teacher, and this was back in the 90s, in the early 90s. And at that time, you had to go to Unity Village for 2 weeks over a long period of time, and you had to take these classes. And like Meg is going to be doing, you have to have a special study, the SDS. I don't even remember what it is, but you have to answer all sorts of questions about Unity teaching. And so I was back at Unity Village for one of these trainings, and part of what we used to do as a group, we'd go visit churches. And I remember going to the Unity Church in Overland Park, Kansas. Anybody been there? If you've gone to Unity Village, you might have gone. Anyway, it was like a mega church. They had this great big huge building, and it was on a street called Pyramid or something, and it was like, it was a really big deal. Full band, big to do, probably 400 or 500 people every Sunday. And we got there late, our little group got there late, and they had a window. And so we couldn't go and sit because it was full already. And so we're standing in the back. And the minister was a woman. And she started giving her talk. And I'm like, I hadn't had a woman minister before. My minister was a man, and the only ministers that I knew were men. And she's doing the talk, and I'm standing there listening through the speakers. And all of a sudden, I had this, I think I could do that. It was just like that little thought. This is like 1992. I was a real estate agent. I had my own business. and I was doing licensed teacher just because I was a curious one. But it was that one little kind of like, and I realized that started me on a trajectory to just kind of begin to do the next thing, do the license. It wasn't, I didn't come out away from that saying to anybody that I had that thought. I don't think I told anybody. In fact, I'm not sure I ever told anybody. I just remembered it this morning. I remembered what it felt like standing there and kind of the nervousness about that. But it was exactly that experience of how the divine sometimes kind of hits you over the head with qualities of being that you have that you weren't really aware of. And the quality of being wasn't be minister. It wasn't be minister, because that's a doing, that's a role. It was about holding sacred space. It was about holding a sacred space, So it's very powerful for us to begin to understand this idea of what are our spiritual gifts. And I want to read a little bit from the Bible. There's so many different places in the Bible where spiritual gifts are referred to in many different ways. And it wasn't, Jesus didn't specifically talk about it. And, I was trying to think of a story about someone in Jesus's time. And the person that I thought of most was Peter. Peter representing faith. Peter was a fisherman, and when he met Jesus, his name was not Peter, his name was Simon, and he was one of the fishermen. And because he had such a strong connection with Jesus, basically his name was changed to Peter, which meant rock. And then Jesus later said, upon this rock I'm going to build this spiritual community, this community of faith, because of the faith that you carry. And we know in stories of Peter was not totally constant in his faith, was he? This was a spiritual gift that Peter identified with, and we identify as Peter as the disciple who carries the power of faith. But Peter was just a human being, He doubted like everyone. Before the cock crows 3 times, you're going to deny me, and doesn't he do it? He steps out of the boat because he sees Jesus and he has great faith, and then he looks down and he sees the water and he goes, oh my God, I can't do this, and he starts sinking. It's kind of how we are with our spiritual gifts sometimes. They come to us and we explore the being quality of them, but it doesn't mean that it's a constant thing that we're able to just be in that field all the time. So some things that people have said about spiritual gifts, and I'm going to just read this is from Corinthians. And some of these things that they mention in the Bible, you may think, this sounds really weird, but there's a way we can translate these things to be qualities of being for us. 1 Corinthians 12. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them all. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord, the same. We're in service to the divine when we're giving these gifts. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it is the same God at work. Now, to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. And this, I think, is just such an important part of understanding for us. When we begin to start having some clarity about what the spiritual gifts that we have and own, we have to understand that we've come here to be part of a field of oneness, that all that we have been given as gifts of Spirit are meant to be given for the good of all, for the benefit of all being, for the benefit of all life. Not just the human life, but for the plants, for the animals, for our planet, for the air, for the earth. That we are not just here to give the gifts for ourselves or even our small family or our community. So we'll look a little bit at Andrew Harvey's understanding of that in just a minute. So to one, there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, and to another, a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by that one Spirit. to another miraculous powers, and to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different kinds of tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and the Spirit distributes them to each one just as the divine determines. So these are some very kind of esoteric qualities of being, but I think we can move this into a much more understandable way for us in our daily life, to really look at what some of the qualities of being, which in this teaching that Unity has given us on spiritual gifts, they refer to as the true self. The gifts that we give come from the true self. So I think now is when I'd love to have you all pass these out. The sheets are right there. They're two-sided, and there's some pens if people need a pen. I'd like to really invite you to kind of explore this for yourself. And what I'm going to be asking you to do first is to begin to think of one or two people that you really admire. And they could be people that you know. They could be people in history. They could be somebody that you saw on a TV show. It could be anybody, but somebody that you admire. And just put their name down, and then take a look. You'll see on the sheet on session 1, put their name, and identify 3 qualities of this person that you resonate with, that you admire. Go on. Hmm?
You have another sheet up there?
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. Did you get a pen? We'll get you one. Anyone else need a pen? Yeah. Yeah. And don't overthink, because this is not going to be a quiz and a test. You'll be able to take this home and play with it some more if you like. Could I have one, Meg? Yeah, yeah. Your pen doesn't work. I'm sorry. Sorry, got to get up. Do as many as you want. Yeah, this is just for you. So for our Zoomers, maybe you take a piece of paper and do the same thing. Just write the names down of someone you admire, and 3 or 4, 2 or 3 attributes, just using one word of that particular person. Qualities of being that they have. we'll just take another minute. And of course, you can do this at home as well. Take these home. And I'll be happy to send them to any Zoomers who want them as well. So I'd love to hear from a few people. What are some of the qualities that came out for you in the people? Anybody willing to share a quality? Yes.
President Kennedy.
And what was one of the qualities that you had?
His honesty, likability, and as a leader. He was a leader.
Honesty, likability, and excellent leader. Leadership. Excellent. Anybody else have one that they'd like to share? Yes. Mother Teresa. What were some of the things you said?
Her service to others, benevolence, and compassion.
Service to others, her benevolence, and her compassion. Fabulous. We'll do Suzanne here, and then Julia, and then
I picked Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama.
Strength,
Strength,
intelligence,
intelligence, commitment. Awesome. Jules?
I picked Jasmine Crockett,
Jasmine Crockett.
bold, brave, and intelligent.
Bold, brave, and intelligent. I love this. Okay, what about you?
Well, it's my spouse who passed, but she was loving without judgment.
Loving without judgment. Beautiful, beautiful. Carmen? Oh, you're sweet.
Stability, spirituality, confidence, wisdom, self-expression, beauty, kindness, helping, and I don't know.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, you guys get the idea, okay? Now, so here's the deal. The qualities that you picked are in you. These are who you are. This is who you came to be, because you would not value these qualities in someone else if you couldn't already identify them in yourself. So this exercise, it's a beginning exercise for us to begin to start discovering who we came here to be. The spiritual gift is about who we came here to be. And, you know, we don't need to have 25 of them. We can focus our attention on one, or we can focus our attention on 2 or 3. But I really invite you to take this home and really go through this in your heart, because you'll see the next piece of this activity is to pick 3. This says you could pick 6 qualities. Eventually, we're going to narrow it down to 3 qualities. But to begin to hone this down as you look at your different people that you honor and that you really respect, as you look at all the different qualities, see where there's multiples. You know, maybe there are many times that you find someone who has a sense of compassion, and that may be one of the, and then we begin to see that's a quality that I really, really value. It's a quality that means a lot to me. You'll see on the other side of your sheet, I made a copy, and of course, this is not, it's not limited to these qualities, but this is personal core values that can become part of the spiritual gift that we carry. Clearly, acceptance, adventure, authenticity, belonging, challenge, community, compassion, cooperation, creativity, equality, excellence, knowledge, humor, honesty, meaningful work, leadership. Some of these things are going to be some of the things that you will have already looked at. But even as you're going through this in your own time, in your prayer time, you may find some other things that pop out that you think, oh, that's so important to me. And part of what I've just noticed in my own life is this kind of evolves over time. A quality might be there for you, and then you get a more of a subtle understanding of what that quality is. Because we're looking right now at the spiritual gift that is emerging as a quality of being within us. We're not looking at the human doing and the verb that's going to take whatever this quality out into the world. So begin to become kind of more familiar with the people that you admire in your life and start really honing in. You know, I was thinking about Charlie as I was preparing this. Of course, the timing of all this, you know, this talk was put on the calendar actually in January. that I was going to be speaking about this on this day, and I was thinking so much about Charlie the qualities and the gifts of being that he carried and brought to all of us. And we can identify that in someone else, but sometimes it's challenging for us to identify it in ourselves. There's a quote from Robert Frost about this, and I think that it's important that we don't confuse what we do for a living with who we are as a spiritual being and who we came here to be. Sometimes they're totally in alignment, but other times we have a passion for something that isn't necessarily connected to what we do for a living, and that we're in service to that in the world. So Robert Frost said, "My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation. As my two eyes make one in sight, only where love and need are one. And the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever finally done, for heaven and the future's sake." So I love this idea, and my teacher in India, Sri Pritaji, has a very beautiful, it was a TED talk that she did in China years ago. And the talk was helping people, young people, it was for young college-age people, helping them find what they were to do in the world. And her whole point was exactly this. In other words, find out who you came here to be and find out what the world needs. Look out in the world and see what the world needs. And where do you feel a pull for that? Where is your heart being tugged? And bring that gift that you have into that need. Carry that into that need. And for some people, that becomes their vocation. For others, it's simply the gift we give in the world. So I'd like to close by sharing a little bit from a book that Andrew Harvey wrote on hope. And the quote is, "How exactly do you become a midwife in the rebirth that is now happening in our world?" Now, this is not a new book, but we hopefully are having a rebirth in our world right now. There's a lot of things that need to be reborn in our world, and our spiritual nature needs to be called up to a higher level to use our spiritual gifts, to be midwives of what is coming through. And what he says is, we make a steady commitment to combine 5 interlinked forms of service. So the first is the service to the divine. And in his understanding, when he's talking about service to the divine, he's talking about how everything we do it as a blessing, as the hands and feet of the divine. We're in service to the divine when we show up in every moment in our life. He says, without constant help, grace, illumination, and strength, no one can serve, especially in a world as challenging as ours. So we turn to the divine and serve in devotion and with gratitude, asking constantly and humbly to be illuminated, to keep our hearts compassionate, and to be filled always with a sacred energy. That first act of service is a service to the divine. The next is to serve yourself as an instrument of the divine, which means to fully take care of ourselves, body, mind, and spirit, to serve ourselves by taking care of ourselves with prayer, meditation, calming the body, but eating healthy food, getting enough rest, getting enough movement so that the body stays healthy. So the second service is in service to the divine within each one of us. The third one, he says, is service to all sentient beings in life. So all the animals, all the humans that we meet, the earth, he says, everyone you connect with, every being you connect with is God in disguise. I love that. God in disguise. So that's the third, to be in service to all sentient beings. The fourth is to serve where you live, where you're planted, your local community. That could be something that, again, that tugs at your heart, where you feel, I need to step out and be part of this. As a community here, we've been supporting the food bank, not only with peanut butter and other things, but with our financial tithes, we've been giving to the food bank last quarter and part of last year. Now we're giving to a new agency. And the board has made a decision. We'll give you more information about its Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. So it's wonderful to be able to connect with something local and be in service to them, whether it's, in this case, we're giving financially or physically going and helping and supporting or speaking out. And finally is service to the global community. And right now, we all are called to be in service to the global community, to the change that's happened, to be the change that we want to see in the world. So I'd just like to invite you to explore a little bit more in your own life what your spiritual gifts are. The gifts, I slept and I dreamed that life is all joy. I woke and I saw that life is all service. I served and I saw that service is joy. This is Khalil Gibran. Mahatma Gandhi, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Be ye doers of the word, not hearers only. So we're being called to really develop what is this gift that's mine. And next week we're going to look a little bit farther. I don't know what that was, somebody's phone. We're being called to look a little bit more into how it is we're supposed to show up, not only as a being who we came here to be, but what is it we're called to do and how we're supposed to show up in the world. So I hope you enjoy exploring this for yourself a little bit. And I don't know if anybody wants to share it with me. I'd love to, either give me a call or send me a message and say, hey, I discovered these are 3 things that I'm, it's part of my passion, part of my joy, and I'm really beginning to focus more specifically on them. So blessings and grace as we move through this week, and gratitude for those of you who are here today and that you'll stay, those who will stay with us to be in our celebration with Charlie. We have some music.